everybody. Well, welcome to the North of Tyne Cabinet meeting. Just a quick reminder, if you're speaking, could you remove your mask? Actually, I don't think that's directly relevant to anybody. It's a very well-spaced room and the air conditioning's on. So we have, as far as I'm aware, there's only one apology for absence. Councillor Forbes is absent amongst the Cabinet members. And welcome Councillor Paula Holland, who's substituting for him. Welcome, Paula. I think it's your first Cabinet meeting, isn't it, North of Tyne? And we have apologies from Daljit Lally and Pat Ritchie and Janice Gillespie as well. So are there any declaration of interest that we don't know? None. Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting circulated with the agenda pack. Everybody happy to agree them as a true record? I can see nods. Thank you very much. It's we're a long way apart, aren't we? You really do have to nod quite vigorously to be seen. So let's move on to item 4, the announcements. Now, a significant announcement here. Everybody will be aware that there's a comprehensive spending review coming up, and there hasn't been one for some years. This is really quite significant. And obviously, as a North of Tyne Combined Authority, we have published something, but I'm going to ask our Managing Director, Henry Kippin, to run us through the North of Tyne submission. And it's a long room, so I'm going to keep talking so Henry doesn't feel the pressure as he's getting up to the podium. Thanks, Henry.
Finish the walk of shame. Okay, so I'm really delighted actually to be presenting this. This is the, as the Mayor said, the comprehensive spending review submission for the North of Tyne Combined Authority to this year's CSR. As ever, it's a document that, well, as you can see from the title, is about the whole region. It's been put together with a really strong cross-regional collaboration and represents all parts of our area and all of our sectors, which I'll go through. There's quite a lot of detail on here. There will be copies available, so I wouldn't expect anybody to drill into all of this now, but I'll go over at a headline level what we're proposing. And as ever, let me see. As ever, this builds on what we are good at. So I think Mayor and Cabinet have a really good, bold, strong vision for levelling up already. We're not asking for government to define that for us. We're asking for additional investment in the things that we're already good at and we're already doing. So if you look on this page here, you'll see set out a number of the things that we already have in train that are delivering better outcomes for the region already. They range from adult education and skills and inclusion, so important after COVID, clean energy, good green jobs, really bold investment vehicles are being created in that push for net zero, which is so important to all of us. New homes and thriving communities, a really ambitious brownfield fund, and of course, investment in recovery from COVID, which has been delivered so collaboratively on top of the fantastic work that's gone on over the last year and a half across the region. It's also worth noting that Mayor and Cabinet have been really consistent in pushing for a really bold settlement around the cultural and creative sectors, the value of tourism, the value of bringing things together, often not present within stories of the economy of the region, but actually it's so fundamental to us as a region. You can see that coming through our programme. We have a very, very bold settlement around digital economy, digital infrastructure, and addressing what we know as a digital exclusion gap. You'll see 18+ million in that space currently in delivery after decisions from Cabinet. And then, of course, last but not least on this list, but making the North of Tyne a great place to be and do business, and taking advantage of what we know is a moment in time, really, after COVID, where we can put our foot forward and look at that mix of country, coast and city and the investable place that we have and really maximise that along with our partners. So that's what we're building on. And we're saying here, really, this is great, but it's not enough. And our CSR proposal is about co-investment in these things in a way that will deliver not only a return for us, but a return for government. And you can see that playing out on this slide here, which shows 635 million worth of projects, which are in this CSR submission, which build on many of the things that you as local authorities are submitting to. We're confident that will deliver 3.5 billion worth of private sector investment and 14,500 jobs. So we're not asking for a set of handouts here. This is an investment proposition that we know stacks up because we can see this already in evidence. course, like with everything that we do, we're building that on a evidence base that is robust in terms of not only what we're good at, our assets, you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen here, world-class assets around offshore wind, around the digital sector, the culture and creative sector, and our people and our places, which are so fundamental. Some real fragilities that we know about. They were there before COVID. They're there after COVID. A fragile labour market, child poverty statistics, which are going the wrong way. So we know that we've got some serious issues to address. And all of the proposals in this CSR submission are directly related to those things that we've pulled out as both assets and key weaknesses. So if that's the backdrop, then I'll just go through what we are asking for. And that is along 5 thematic areas. The first one is about our progress towards a clean economy. Obviously fundamental for us. We'll deliver, we think, 10,000 new jobs within the region over a series of investments. It's also completely fundamental to the government's vision about net zero and the pace at which we need to transition to that as a country. And you'll see picked out here is bold propositions around securing the future of the Tyne, around the Levelling Up Fund bids that have gone in from Newcastle and North Tyneside, and making sure that we make clear the physical barriers to doing that. So the removal of the overhead cables so that we can literally get bigger wind turbines and vessels down the river is so fundamental. We know there is an evidence base which tells us that we currently sustain almost 5,000 jobs along that river. We know we can increase that and deliver almost 4,000 more with those investments. So there's a real return in human terms and for government too. We've been clear about the need for additional investment in the R&D capability we have in Blyth, the offshore renewable catapult, which is so fundamental to positioning us at the forefront not only of the manufacturing and supply chain for that sector, but of the R&D component. We're testing new things. We're leading the country in doing that. And of course, we are absolutely clear that we need strong collaboration from government on some of our headline inward investment propositions. Britishvolt is picked out here. That is an ongoing relationship that we know that we need to build and strengthen over time. Secondly, we've picked out some propositions on closing the education gap, getting more people into jobs and training. The education challenge that Cabinet have been really clear about from day one is in there, absolutely, and four squarely with the same principles that you saw in the devolution deal about the importance of education to the future of our region and to economic growth, but also some specific propositions here on skills for some of our key sectors, on strengthening our apprenticeship offer, on building on our relationship with DWP around employment support, and making sure that we are asking alongside other Merrill combined authorities and local areas, in fact, for a strong devolved component of the Shared Prosperity Fund when that is announced at the Comprehensive Spending Review. I think there's real cross-regional support for that as a proposition too. Secondly, we picked out, thirdly, should I say, sorry, rapid renewal for our high streets, communities and places. We know, because Cabinet has been consistent about this for the last year and a half, that quick recovery from COVID and getting and generating footfall in our places and really building on some of the dialogue about the future of our high streets and town centres that is ongoing is absolutely key. We have a set of propositions that will enable us to do that and co-invest with us in that. And of course, we want to build on the strong partnership we have with Homes England. We want to test innovative new models of brownfield funding which support net zero housing. And we're really clear that a joint plan for further government relocations to make sure that the intention to take Whitehall out of Whitehall, if that makes sense, is something that we can work hand in glove with government on in this region. And of course, there is a strong play from Leeds all the way up to Scotland on the east coast of being really proactive about what that looks like. We're really clear also about our transport and infrastructure requirements. We know that they will drive our future growth. We know that our people need good quality transport and integrated transport to get around. So you'll see a number of propositions here around digital infrastructure, matching what we've done already as a combined authority around the key road and rail infrastructure that we need, especially given some of the inward investment that we've talked about. And we have a proposition here which is also really clear, specific, and will deliver value around the Northumberland line to make sure that that rail line is a catalyst for economic growth and skills and inclusion and new homes as well. So these are real things. These are real propositions already in with government, and we're reinforcing some of those through our submission. And then finally, in terms of the headline themes, improving the UK's post-pandemic health resilience is a bit of a mouthful, but what we are saying here is that we, as a region, have incredibly strong health assets. We've been incredibly strong on, if you like, the scientific response to COVID and the innovative response of some of our institutions to that. So if you look, for example, at the proposition around support for the integrated COVID hub, support for the work that Northumbria are doing on PPE innovation, they're all examples of that. And we have really a strong pitch to make around the future of ageing, longevity, and the building of a Centre for Ageing and Vitality, which could be world leading and building on our National Innovation Centre for Ageing. And then, of course, we know that the flip side of supporting the economy is good quality public services and prevention and real innovation, because we know that there's been so many vulnerabilities exposed through COVID. We're pushing hard for a prevention fund for the region, which would support our councils to innovate in this space. Now, very, very lastly, I promise, as always, the critical enablers and the next steps are the most fundamental bits. We've been very, very clear, our cabinet members have been clear about the need to push for access to long-term transport funding for the region. That's been a consistent line and continues to be incredibly important via our Joint Transport Committee. We have been pushing very hard to make sure that we maximise devolution in the region. So if there is funding to come through the comprehensive spending review, that government uses the structures and assurance processes and accountability that we've built here, and making sure that we're on the front foot in terms of supporting our local government partners to realise a settlement that would help local government be more sustainable over the long run, because we are you in that sense, and none of this happens without sustainable local government. So we're really clear that that is a fundamental thing that underpins all of the additionality we've talked about here. So I'll leave it there, Mayor and Cabinet. That proposition has gone into government. There's a whole load of detail under the bonnet, as you would expect, and we'll continue to push at all levels to make sure that that's heard in the right places.
Thank you very much, Henry. That's a comprehensive spending request as well. It's notable that there wasn't a CSR last year. I've been engaged with ministers pushing to get this landed. Another meeting today, trying to land the points, particularly around offshore wind, the meeting today, to make sure that this does get heard. Has anybody got any comments or questions they would like to ask?
Just a comment, thanks, Mayor, and that's to congratulate you and your colleagues on the content. It's great. It's a really, really strong plan, but also to congratulate you on the process. So wearing my LEP hat, we've obviously been working up our own comprehensive spending review response, and to be able to engage so openly and early with Henry and colleagues to make sure that we are saying a consistent message from this patch and the wider region has been really helpful. So just to say thank you for the open, collaborative approach to it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear. Richard.
Thank you, Jamie. I think just to add to that, really, people won't necessarily understand just how much work's gone into this from across the Cabinet, across the three authorities, with officers, with the LEP, and it really has been a really good process. With our part of the region speaking with a very clear voice. And it's interesting to see in amongst here just how many projects there are that really tie the three authorities together in terms of offshore wind and climate change, obviously, and all of the stuff that we have the potential for there. But things like Hadrian's Wall, the economic corridor for the Northumberland line and the Northumberland line itself, things that cross through every single one of our constituent authorities and will benefit people as a result across all three of the councils that make up the combined authority.
That's a really strong point. Thank you. Norma.
I'd just like to reiterate what Richard had said, because had we not come together at the outset, some of those things could not have been agreed, and it's the mere fact that we have come together that we can do a great deal for the north of the Tyne region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to echo Henry's point that he made, anything that's going, we want it devolved so we can tie it together locally and get one project reinforcing another. Thank you, everybody, and thank you very much for that update on that, Henry. Let's move on. The next item on the agenda is the Education Improvement Work Programme. nobody can have failed to see in the news over the past year, 18 months, the disruption that's happened in education, in schools in particular. And we already had a joint school improvement strategy, but this work builds upon that. I'm not going to say any more and steal Karen's thunder. Over to Karen Kilgour.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the next steps in our Innovative Education Improvement Pilot Programme. That's really not easy to say. It builds on the co-design priorities agreed in our joint school improvement strategy. It acknowledges our ongoing ask of government to follow through on their commitment to fund an ambitious North of Tyne education challenge. And most importantly, it supports pupils most affected by the pandemic. Schools in England have faced unprecedented disruption and lost over 115 learning days. We know that North East schools have been hit harder than other areas of the country, and we know also that the inequalities we sought to address in our education challenge have worsened as a result. And there isn't one of us around this table who isn't saddened and frustrated by that. So this work programme has recovery at its heart. Evidence tells us that pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and despite our digital inclusion programme, we know that over 4,500 families in the North of Tyne could not access online learning during school closures. How could children possibly learn in those circumstances? We must address this. There's no time to lose if our children aren't going to lose out permanently, and we must act now. If the government doesn't yet see the urgency, well, we do. We already knew literacy was a huge issue for us, and not enough children are school ready. And so attainment is lower, ambition diminishes, and unemployment and poverty grow, and sometimes that's even generation after generation. It's utterly unacceptable that any group of children underachieve in education. Every child, whatever their background or circumstances, whatever their children have or don't have, their parents have or don't have, whatever their abilities or disabilities, whoever they are, every child deserves the opportunity to progress and succeed in school and beyond. That requires a high-quality education system to give all children, and in particular those from disadvantaged families, a good start in life. We know that there are interwoven factors that influence the educational attainment of our children, including socioeconomic, cultural, linguistic, geographical, and intergenerational issues. But that complexity should never be an excuse for apathy or inaction. And I know that across North of Tyne, we have teachers and head teachers utterly committed to ensuring that our schools have a transformative effect on children's lives. This report connects, as it should, to our programme on child poverty and our commitments on jobs and skills, supporting the families of our children into work, improving living standards, and accelerating economic independence and better life chances for the children who live with under or unemployed parents and occasionally intergenerational poverty. With our partner local authorities, we are helping to create and foster a school-led, self-improving system, a system characterised by high expectation and aspiration, innovation, autonomy and freedom, so that school leaders and teachers can respond directly to the needs of their pupils and work together with other schools and professionals to provide the very best education they can for all of our children. This 2-year pilot proposes an innovative approach based on best bets for impact, finding and amplifying existing good practice and listening and learning from what works and what doesn't. We've worked extensively with the Regional Schools Commissioner, and I thank her for her time and energy, to ensure our priorities align and that this pilot capitalises on existing Department of Education programmes. Focusing on recovery, transition into and between schools, supporting schools in the most challenging contexts, staff recruitment and development, and pathways into careers. This programme will address regional gaps exacerbated by the pandemic that see North of Tyne pupils underperforming compared to their peers. We will ensure we no longer lag behind the rest of the country. We need system-wide improvement if we're going to reduce this historical underperformance, and this requires coordinated action by this combined authority in partnership with local government and education professionals. And I can assure you we have this collaboration, and we have the ambition. And together, we will achieve our collective ambitions for our children, so that they, in turn, can achieve their own ambitions and reach their full potential. It's what all our children deserve, and I'm absolutely delighted to recommend the report to Cabinet, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Karen. Would anybody like to speak to that? Norma, please.
Yeah, I don't want to, repeat everything that Karen said, but at the end of the day, I'm just delighted that this report and our children and young people are one of our priorities north of the Tyne. I think we all realise that they are our future. And at the end of the day, whatever happens, what does happen actually in those very early years and through education dictates the journey they're on in future life. So I'm delighted, Karen, to say well done. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Hear, hear. Anybody else indicating to speak? Just to note that this is a significant spending commitment of nearly £1 million. And this will make a difference, a significant difference to people. But it also is in parallel with the presentation we saw earlier, where we have a very specific request of, I think it's £30 million in the CSR ask, because it's good to do some good work. It's even better to do lots more good work. And we all know that this requires resources. And I really hope that government step up and back this. It was in our devolution deal, as agreed, and it will make a difference, exactly as Norma says. What happens in those early years sets people on a trajectory for life. So, let's take the recommendations then. We'll take them as a pair. Approve the funding of £967,800 for the pilot education investment improvement programme as written there, including the delegations to the Managing Director and CFO. Is that agreed? Thank you. The next item then, item 7, community engagement, a future approach. And this, the purpose of this report is to give Cabinet an update on our main community engagement platforms. And I'll hand over to Karen.
Thank you again. As elected representatives, we seek to listen and engage with our communities and our residents, doing things with them and not to them. Our communities are partners and allies in the recovery of the pandemic, and through Crowdfund North of Tyne, we've already seen the benefits that can be reaped by supporting and encouraging local communities to identify issues and develop their own solutions. From beekeeping to yoga and altered eating to my own personal favourite, expanding the beach access wheelchair scheme, we have already offered 15 projects, over £50,000 of grant support, matching nearly £80,000 raised by local communities. Community donations that range from £2 to over £1,000, with 350 people making a contribution totalling in excess of £76,000. And every pound we contribute raises £2.50, and that's quite a rate of return. By empowering our residents to problem solve, they're able to make a real difference for themselves, their neighbours, and their environment. We want all our residents to be able to fulfil their potential. We want them to be healthy, able to enjoy our city, our coast, our countryside, our history, our art, our culture. We need to provide the opportunities and support for them to introduce local initiatives that are both right for them and right for the environment. And I was really pleased to see that the Mayor introduced his Zero Carbon, Zero Poverty Space Hive round. And in a few short weeks, we have over 40 projects wanting to raise money and make a difference. This report recommends that we invest in our communities so that they believe in themselves and invest in each other. To do that means communities and residents need to know each other, share ideas, share ambitions, share their goals with their neighbours. So we're working with Nextdoor to support them to do just that. It gets our message out to over 100,000 people. It tells the North of Tyne Combined Authority story. But more than that, it engages communities with each other and breathes life into relationships that have been so restricted in this last year to 18 months. And we hope to do more with Nextdoor to ensure everyone can play their part in our ambition through their own ideas. I said at our last Cabinet meeting that co-production is a key part of our strategy, and to do that we must listen. So the exploration of what we can do with Commonplace is a natural next step. So for anyone who hasn't yet heard of Commonplace, it's a citizen engagement platform designed to reach communities, engage them in conversation, analyse their feedback, and collaborate on future ideas. Building trust and transparency with local people and, again, getting our message and our story out there. We're breaking new ground. Indeed, we're the first combined authority to engage with residents in these ways. We're at the forefront of modern regional policy with local innovation and local investment, building freedom and flexibility for local people and facilitating communities to make decisions based on local need. This is real devolution. Devolution that focuses on renewing and redesigning economic activity with our communities. We, as a combined authority, are not only providing jobs and skills, but we're building confidence and autonomy and space for ideas and ambition. So I'm delighted to recommend the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Well, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions or comments. And I'll sit so it's a really awkward silence and someone feels compelled to speak. The Space Hive Fund, I think it's been marvellous, the success, when you're saying that already 40 projects coming forward. And that point that was made, that we are the first mayoral combined authority, to take this approach to co-design. It doesn't matter what political party you're in, or an independent, everybody says, why do they never talk to us? Well, we do. We've had our Citizens' Assembly on climate change. We're co-designing everything here through the communities. The first report on education is co-designed and talking to people. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're managing to do so much so fast, is because if you talk to the people who it affects, they usually have a pretty good insight into what they need. Not always the solutions, it does require expertise, but it makes a big difference. And if there was one thing, if I can just give Dan a little nod there, that you want to report from today, give the Space Hive Fund another plug, because the more people apply for that, the better. Any questions, anybody? No. Well, let's move on to the recommendations then. So Cabinet's recommended to authorise the the Managing Director, in consultation with the Mayor as Cabinet member for this portfolio, to finalise and implement all the steps to take this forward, including securing and agreeing appropriate funding from the investment fund of no more than £375,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Item number 8 is the low carbon and green jobs update. This report, it provides an update on, from a couple of perspectives, a very substantial investment that we're making in reducing carbon emissions and creating green jobs. And in one sense, that's the core of our investments. But additionally, in July, Cabinet received a report from the Citizens' Assembly on climate change, which considered what should we do in the region to address climate change and its causes fairly, effectively, and quickly. The recommendations covered a number of themes: housing, transport, and energy. However, there were wider recommendations, including awareness raising and raising novel forms of finance for carbon reductions. Now, there's a lot that we were already doing in this space. I'm actually going to directly refer to my notes here, because there's so much. On housing retrofit, the work has been highlighted, the scale of the challenge in our region, and we are already doing some work, commissioned work, with the Energy Savings Trust, supported by Frontier Economics, to develop an evidence base, because everybody knows that retrofit is an issue. What people don't know is exactly what needs to be done. Now, we don't have the funding in place, but we hear regularly the phrase shovel-ready schemes. This is about getting the information base ready so that we can take that directly out to start happening as soon as the funding is available. Raising awareness of low-carbon opportunities and supporting low-carbon decision-making for individual citizens. We've allocated £100,000 to support citizen, community and public sector engagement. We're also funding some projects directly through schools. The Bring It On competition with the Institute of Civil Engineers, which is engaging with kids in school and giving them a STEM education at the same time. And a similar thing in primary, and one in tertiary education for sixth formers. And these are a strong focus on STEM and digital subjects. We had our very successful Green Economy Summit, again raising awareness, and we have our partnership with Ashton, which is about how low carbon benefits can be secured by the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. Our Green New Deal Fund this is a long list, our Green New Deal Fund is £18 million flagship programme, which is launched very, very soon in the next couple of weeks. Now this is about leveraging in finance to support carbon reduction projects and create green jobs at the same time. So we've partnered with Amber Infrastructure, and these are projects that will directly reduce emissions by things like generating renewable energy, such as reducing heat waste, stimulating green growth, catalysing investments, and enabling supply chain growth in things such as heat decarbonisation, small-scale renewables, local energy systems, low carbon transport, and the list goes on. Our community energy schemes, these are in partnership with the Northeast, well, led by the Northeast Community Energy Steering Group, and by mid-2023, we would expect to see between 50 and 250 VSCSE academic and research organisations working together collectively across the region, not just the north of Tyne, to develop and deliver impactful community energy initiatives. And we're securing green jobs, of course, not only in offshore wind infrastructure, but other innovation. £3.5 million innovation in the offshore technology programme. We have partnered with industry-leading sectors, such as the Giants Equinor, the developer of the world's largest offshore wind farm, obviously over there in the Dogger Bank, and an EDF, and they are located in Blythe. And any number of things, particularly including our partnerships with the Catapult. But I'm going to hand over to my Cabinet colleague, Richard, Councillor Wearmouth, because I'm sure this is an area that he's very strong on and would like to add some comments on the report.
Thank you very much, JV. I'll hopefully manage to add all of the comments that I wanted to add, because I'm starting to lose my voice after an awful lot of discussions that have been going on at meetings throughout this week already. So thank you very much for the introduction. This is something that's very close to all our hearts. The North East has the potential to be the absolute home and hub of this industry in the UK and indeed worldwide, and the north of the Tyne will be right at the centre of that. We need more green jobs as we recover from the pandemic, and as my voice recovers as well. We need to reinvent our economy, and it's a fantastic opportunity that we have to do that. It'll bring great opportunities for our residents, sustainability for our industry and indeed our people and our planet. Energy is a major strength of the north of the Tyne. As I've said, we were the home of the Industrial Revolution, of the revolution that brought steam engines and so on to the world, but also people could forget the electricity industry as well, and the fantastic work that was done by Charles Parsons and Charles Mertz, who are very prominent people within the history of the energy sector, and were based here in Newcastle. In terms of as we look on the potential to transform our economy to a zero carbon future, it's vital that we ensure that we have the skills that are built up in our peoples to take advantage of the emerging opportunity. And indeed, I'm sat next to a superb officer from our own authority who is making a real lead in making sure that that we're achieving that. Building an inclusive and competitive low-carbon economy needs not only devolved adult education, as we've been speaking about, and that's really important that we hammer that home in the days, weeks, and months ahead, but also that we invest in technical skills and to that end, as I speak, we're launching a call for £2 million worth of investment in green growth and skills. We're supporting employer-led investment in skills initiatives, and full details are now available on our website. And I hope that that went seamlessly, and they are available on the website. And I'm looking to Henry, who's given me the thumbs up, so there we are. We'll ensure that people have the skills they need to capitalise on the growth and employment opportunities in the low-carbon and renewable economy. Partly because moving to a low-carbon economy is not just about creating new jobs, but changing existing ones. And that's going to be absolutely vital, really, that we understand that, because there's no real job that will be the same throughout your career anymore. That time has been and gone. But partly because we'll be supporting existing businesses to modernise and operate in a more resource-efficient way, minimising carbon emissions and preparing for climate change. The jobs market is changing and will change. Green jobs are here to stay in large numbers, and residents need to be able to access them. We don't want, when we bring these fantastic opportunities to our area, that our residents are merely peering over the fence, as I often put it, and wondering what goes on in these fantastic, shiny buildings that we'll be creating. They really have to be at the ground level. We must develop the infrastructure in our ports and quays, as we've talked about, and it was a really interesting presentation that we've seen already from Henry this morning about some of those things that inhibit our growth, and that we'll be asking government to help us to put right, because not because we're the type of authority, and there are those that exist within the country, no doubt, who complain, but actually we've got a plan, and we want merely help to put it in place, and so doing create the opportunity for the people of the combined authority. And we've got massive opportunities. We've already agreed over £5 million of funding for projects, including on the banks on the north of the Tyne and in Blyth and in my home county. And we expect hundreds of jobs, certainly 500 jobs from these projects, though realistically I foresee probably significantly more than that. And we're asking that the Cabinet approve, therefore, an additional allocation of £4 million for the offshore wind programme up to 2023. This will enable us to build on what we've already achieved and develop our plans for the next 2 years. I believe that addressing the climate crisis presents a unique opportunity to define the type of economy that works for everybody in our communities, and to recover from the pandemic and to move towards an economy that regenerates rather than extracts, and that's absolutely vital as we look to the future of our planet. What we need in a sustainable economy, in short, is one that meets the needs of the people, and now and in the future, and it should sustain the natural environment by promoting family-sustaining jobs and communities. We should provide and encourage work that contributes to meeting these goals and discourage work that doesn't. It should ensure people have the skills to find and keep good green jobs. We're doing just that, and I'm very happy to support this report and ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Would anybody else like to ask a question? Glenn.
Yes, good afternoon. I support everything that Richard said, and I think probably my concern slightly is that I know Northumberland have been incredibly proactive in the work that we've done there on our climate change action plan and so on, and I'm sure that North Tyneside and Newcastle are the same. My question really is, are you as Mayor and as Henry, are you comfortable with the way that the three authorities work together, sort of at officer level, that there is the best use of resources, combining all the resources that we have in the best way, and that there is no duplication of effort?
Thank you. Well, given that that was directly a question about how our officers are working together, I'll pass that over to Henry.
So if I can attempt to answer the question, Leader, I would say yes, absolutely. There's a really strong level of collaboration across the authorities, certainly at Chief Exec, Exec Director level, and then through the organisations too. What I would say is as we develop some of the programmes, we'll need to strengthen that. We'll need to build specific collaborations between different officer teams to push forward on particular bits of work, for example, on the North Bank and some of the work in Blyth. But certainly, I would say we have a good, strong level of collaboration across the piece, and it's really something quite notable and strong to build on within this combined authority. It compares well with my experience in other places. So I'd say absolutely yes, and we can always do more and should.
I think just speaking to that, the point that Richard made earlier in the Cabinet meeting, that the North Bank of the Tyne spans authorities. And we call it the North Bank of the Tyne, but the arc goes round to Blyth, as we know it does. Hadrian's Wall, the Northumberland Line, and the Northumberland Line Economic Corridor. These are all things that are joint projects, but will necessitate even more closer working together. These are things that you can't do across local authority boundary. Or we shouldn't see them as boundaries. I can't think of an appropriate adjective right now, but these, we have come together to work together, and let's have more of that. Lucy.
Thank you. I wanted to build on the theme of all these meetings, and particularly they're emphasised in the papers, and that's the role of working together in partnership. And the partners in all these papers are referenced, and if I look at paragraph 111, it talks about the work of the LEP and others. But on this subject particularly, I'm going to take off my LEP hat, and I'm going to put on my day job hat, which is as a Pro-Vice-Chancellor of Northumbria University. And I love this building because it's sandwiched in between two fantastic universities, Northumbria, and you're an alumni, Jamie, and Newcastle. And both these universities particularly have real expertise in the cutting-edge technology and transformation that you've talked about earlier, cutting-edge research that is now world acclaimed. And I guess my plea is don't forget the role of your neighbouring universities here and others down the road, Durham, Sunderland, Teesside, near to us, but particularly the expertise of the two universities on this patch and your patch, because the world research there, as we will have proof when the government's research excellence framework is announced, the results of which are released next year, will demonstrate the strengths on your doorstep. And not just research for the sake of research, research that will make a real difference to the communities. That's it, what I in my old-fashioned world will call applied research, but that's what the research is about. So I know that the universities want to work together in partnership. They're partners in the LEP, and they want to be partners in this work as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And here, Northumbria has turned out some very fine engineers. Did I see Richard? Yes.
Yes, so is Newcastle, thank you. But we'll leave the university rivalry to one side. And just to really to comment on that, Lucy, I think that we have a fantastic opportunity here in the Northeast, and we'll look. We'll not talk about boundaries because we'll look beyond that as well. We have phenomenal capabilities in Northumbria and Newcastle, but as well in Sunderland and in particular in Durham. And what's been really interesting for us is as we've moved forward in Northumberland, in particular in Blyth, with the town deal and so on, to try and create a place where things can come together with the catapult, with the universities, but also that goes right the way down through the levels of education and into STEM and into schools. And it really speaks to that bit that I was referring to earlier about no one being here in this space. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Just to shout really for the catapult, we had a bit about it in the presentation by Henry earlier. It's such a fantastic asset. Really just, I know it already happens, but to implore that the unis and other educational facilities double down on the engagement with the catapult and with local schools to make sure that we have an absolutely seamless transition for any and all levels of people coming into the jobs market.
Norma. Thank you, Richard.
I'm not going to say I went to Newcastle University as well. I'll keep that to myself, okay? I just want to say to all of you, to be quite honest, I just think this is a remarkable and fantastic, rather, opportunity for this area, particularly north of the town. I'm being insular here, north of the town, to drive all this forward and be leaders in this particular area, to be quite honest. We have the will, we have the expertise, and it is top of our agenda, to be quite honest. But for me, and I'm going to tell you sometimes what it's going to do for me, is that bring back that pride and that dignity that many of our shipbuilders and our coal miners and our steel workers went on and worked and worked and worked, and some of them are now out of jobs. It will bring back that opportunity for training, new jobs, and an inner pride that we here on North of Tyne can lead in this industry. It's a fantastic opportunity, and I'm delighted that it goes right around, from particularly some of the offshore and the renewables, right from Blythe, right around Shields, right away up to Newburn in our area, to be quite honest. So this is a fantastic chance, and let's make sure that it happens, because a lot of people talk a lot, don't they? They talk a lot and they have fine words, right? But here in North of Tyne, we've got to make it happen. So I welcome this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Norma. And here, it's all about delivery rather than the words. Let's move to the recommendations then. So first of all, it's to note the report, and also to note that there will be imminent calls issued to promote the green skills and the offshore wind innovation. And I'm sure we can note that. The substantive one is to agree a further allocation of £4 million from the NTCA Investment Fund to increase opportunities for further jobs and investment in offshore wind, and delegate the authority for these to the Managing Director in consultation with the Mayor, appropriate Cabinet member and investment panel to consider and approve the proposals for funding. Is that agreed? And just on that one, the reason that we're putting an extra £4 million in is because the last one was so successful. And point 3, to authorise the Managing Director to finalise the necessary conditions along with the Monitoring Officer as written. Is that agreed? Yeah, thank you. So let's move on to the next one. That's number 9, item number 9 on the agenda. And this is funding for SMEs, social enterprises, and for improving innovation. I was speaking, I think it was just last week, to the Federation of Small Businesses, and then separately, later the same day, to the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry. And you've got a span there from the smallest to the largest businesses. And what was notable, they both told me the same thing, something I was already aware of, but it was interesting to hear it directly from the business organisations, that there are a huge number of small businesses who have weathered COVID, but at the same time that their VAT deferrals are due, they'll start be paying their bounce back loans. There's all sorts of other costs coming online. And the small and medium enterprise sector is so crucial to creating jobs. I made a manifesto commitment to support investment in local businesses, to build local wealth and provide support for small and employee-owned businesses. And indeed, in our devolution deal, it sets out targets for job creation, economic growth, and private sector leverage. All of which, of course, are dependent upon funding and investment. And this report provides recommendations to Cabinet for how we can invest to meet the finance needs of many different businesses at various stages of growth. And it'd be interesting to know that one of the pieces of research that was used to pull this report together was the LEP's review of finance. This means we need funding to support the creation and growth of socially trading businesses as well. These are key to our ambitions for delivering a more social economy. Often these businesses find it very difficult to raise finance, so that's why one of the recommendations in here is so strongly about supporting that sector. If you are a cooperative business or a community-owned business, it's often very difficult. If you're a small business, it's often very difficult to get any kind of funding unless you put your house up as collateral. Now, that's all very well if you have a house and you can afford to take that risk, but many people just don't. Small business finance is crucial, as is encouraging the retention and recirculation of local capital into local funds and businesses. And this is something we've spoken about many times as a cabinet. Particularly that advantage of recirculating wealth. So what we're talking about here is funds operating on a commercial basis so that we can maximize the investment fund that we have and get to spend it over and over again, see the money coming back and see the benefits of all that job creation time and time again. So the report enables a couple of important steps, filling the immediate gaps in finance we've identified. And the details in the report, they set out 4 very clear areas of investment, a total of £15 million of NTCA resources. That's going to provide the heft we need to actually make a difference in this area. But crucially, it is recycling that funding. Backing entrepreneurs in the north of Tyne, social commercial businesses with the investment they need to succeed. It's also a starting point for important collaboration, because this is an opportunity for us to lead. We're leading in so many areas already, and we've only been here for, well, not even 3 years yet. So this is the building of our capability and our wider partners to shape the regional access to finance ecosystem. It is something that everybody in the North East knows. We have suffered from underinvestment a long time. This is about building that capacity here as well as the money. It's deliberately phased and evidence-led. It's being consulted widely, and I think this is a beautifully balanced set of proposals between acting now to support the recovery while building that long-term shift in our business ecosystem that will boost prosperity across our region. So I recommend this report to Cabinet, and would like to invite Councillor Johnson to say a few words. Carl.
Thank you, Mayor. Like all colleagues around this table, I am heartened to see that the economic recovery is underway, and that, as the report states, the finance system is by and large supporting this recovery. But we must remember that the economy remains 5% smaller than its pre-pandemic size. There is still much to do to move the ground and to deliver our ambitions. And our ambition goes beyond getting back to what we had before. We need to reimagine and reinvent, and to do this, we need all parts of our economies in overdrive. Innovation and economic growth need an effective finance system. They always have, but they haven't always got it. We all know that an entrepreneur whose idea has failed or they have struggled, because no one has the courage to resource or the system to back them. As a candidate for investment, I know firsthand that the investment and finance are complex. So I welcome the recognition in this report that we should invest where the gaps are in capital, and that way we can help improve business ability to access the products already out there. Innovation and investment go hand in hand. And I know that for too long the North of Tyne has lagged behind. We are backing innovators with this funding, those who will reimagine our economy and create the jobs of the future. And we know it will give other investors the confidence to join us too. It's an important part of my role to consider how our collective actions and investment as a Cabinet adds up to more than the sum of its parts. And we must ensure that every pound is properly targeted where it can have the most impact. Working with the North East Fund and other partners, we will deliver a joined-up system. And this investment is an important and significant step on its own right. But it also builds on over £50 million we're investing in the growth of our key sectors, business and enterprise support, good green jobs, digital, offshore wind, culture and creative, and health and life science. These investments are nurturing new and existing businesses and realising our potential on a national and international stage. Our investment innovations simply can't stop here. Taking innovation to market is costly. We want to ensure that companies aren't forced to leave our region to access the funding they need, or simply give up because they don't have the backing. Let us never ensure that no idea goes untapped, no creativity is reduced, and no innovation is held back. I too recommend this report to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Carl. Anybody like to... Richard?
Thank you, Jamie. So it was a really interesting report. Thank you, Carl, for it. It's always such a huge thing for anybody to start out on their own business. I remember writing a check for pretty much everything that I had in the bank to start my business, and yet there's nothing more interesting and exciting to do in life than perhaps be an elected politician, who knows. But joking aside, it's really good to see this, and it's really good to see that it's homed in on additionality in terms of the space, rather than trying to duplicate things that are necessarily already being done, because we all know, and especially having held the business portfolio in Northumberland previously, that there's a plethora and myriad of opportunity out there for loans and support and this and that and the other, but you know, that this seems to target a particular space is very welcome. I was going to make a request, if I can be so bold, that we offer people who might engage with this to perhaps come and, if they feel that they would like to give us some feedback on the process that they go through and their experience of it, to make sure that we're tailoring it correctly, because any package is only as good as ultimately its implementation and so on, and it would be good to see the feedback. And also, and we've been good in the time I've been on this cabinet at hearing stories back from people in the real world, and how they've experienced it and what we've enabled them to do. So I'm sure it won't happen overnight. They won't be back at the next meeting to do that. But at some point in the future, it would be good to hear.
I think that's a very sensible approach, and it's obviously, we'll know from other cabinet meetings that once a programme's mature, we really do bring those voices back. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because it's when you know it's working, you know you're doing it right, and we'll do some more of it. Glenn, did I see you indicate?
Yes, you did. I'm pretty much broadly in favour of this for one specific reason, which is that it will allow the name of the North of Tyne Combined Authority to become better known, because people will want to bid in to this and to become more involved, and I think that's got to be a good thing. I suppose my concern in a way is that there are always risks to these sort of ideas, and so I would go along with what Richard says, but I would actually like to have you know, a regular update agenda item, if not every meeting, then certainly every other meeting, just so we can keep on top of things and how they're going.
Thanks. Oh, Norma, yes.
I don't have any objection, because this is public money, to be quite honest. And we are responsible people, and we have to realise that whatever we're giving are helping people along the road, that we're getting value, but more importantly, that is doing what we want to do, to be quite honest. So I have no problems with that whatsoever. Mayor, sorry.
Thank you. Either's good. Did I see? No? No. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Let's move to the recommendations.
Sorry, can I actually just ask, though, that that we do include within the recommendations something around a regular report, please?
Yeah, let me just focus. Yep. What's the process for writing that down? Yeah, that's no problem. We'll add an additional recommendation. So the exact format of that we can look at, but certainly regular reports back to Cabinet is the essence of your recommendation, Glenn, yeah? Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all with that. So let's move on then to the recommendations. First one is to note the contents, conclusions of the report and endorse the proposed objectives as set out in section 1.2. Can I have agreement on that? See some nods. Thank you. Recommendation 2 is to agree an overarching allocation of £15 million over 5 years to enable the first phase of the investment and a strategic approach in achieving these objectives. I can see nods and hands raised there. 3, there's 4 specific ones, but I'll just read to the end. Authorise the Managing Director in consultation with the investment panel, the Mayor and Cabinet Member for Investment and Resources, that's obviously Carl, to consider proposals and award funding to deliver activity aligned with the specific proposals set out in Section 2, with Cabinet updated on progress and with provisional allocations as follows, which kind of covers it, but we'll definitely make sure that it gets the extra recommendation reports in there. And then the specific funding allocations are 900,000 for improving ecosystem coordination, maximising take-up of existing finance and improving investor readiness. B, £10 million for equity investment, including through seeding or investment in new or existing venture funds, with the objective of improving finance for high-growth potential organisations based in the North of Tyne. Excuse me. C, £4 million to establish a social finance fund with the aim of filling gaps in the finance market, including loan and equity and socially trading and employee-owned businesses operating in our key sectors. And finally, D, £100,000 to commission advice on how NTCA and wider stakeholders can improve the flow of local capital into existing or new regional funds and vehicles, retaining regional wealth in our access to finance ecosystem and boosting investment in our key objectives of innovation, growth, and transition to net zero. All right, quite a long one there, but a nod would be good. Thank you. And finally, number 4, to agree the development of proposals should continue to be overseen by the Chief Finance Officer and Managing Director, obviously with ongoing input from local authority, financial and economic directors. And I can see that's agreed. Thank you very much. Right, our next item is the investment fund update, which I'll hand straight over to Carl.
Thank you, Mayor. I've said before, the pandemic has transformed how we think about our economies and our communities. The choices we make today in the North of Tyne will determine our success in building a transition to a greener, more inclusive and more resilient tomorrow. Whilst we know that job vacancies hit a record high and unemployment rates have fallen, and the latest data shows that unemployment is at 5.6% in the North of Tyne. And we also know that the furlough scheme is winding down in a couple of weeks. And I suspect many firms are unlikely to have the capacity to take on all the previously furloughed staff who sadly will lose their jobs. That could be up to 20,000 people in the North of Tyne. I've also got concerns about the reduction in universal credit and the effect the hike in national insurance that tenants will pay, but not the landlords on their income from tenants. As ever, productive work is taxed more and unproductive wealth is taxed less. So our work to tackle child poverty will never have been more relevant. We intend to reduce the cost of school attendance to ensure that pupils are ready to learn, provide financial support at the school gate, and provide work with employers to tackle child poverty. All of our local authorities have done much to address poverty in our communities, and I commend my colleague, Councillor Kilgour, for bringing forward the excellent report to complement our work. As well as the noise around food supplies, we also know the effects of Brexit are showing in our supply chains. So we must work yet harder to support our businesses and campaign for greater inward investment. Inward investment provides opportunity for rapid job creation. Our funds had already helped to attract global technology consultancy ThoughtWorks. They announced last month they opened up a new office in Newcastle, creating over 100 jobs for senior tech professionals. A further project of a similar size is expected in October, creating more than 1,200 jobs. We intend to do more. Working in partnership, we will stimulate inward investment-led generation, focused on corporate services, life sciences, and green energy sectors. Learning from our work with digital activity and creating at least 200 new jobs, we're also seeing a stark mismatch between the skills on offer and what employers need, not least in our culture and creative sector. The tourism sector was hit hard during the lockdown phase of the pandemic, with many businesses changing their approach since restrictions have lifted. Our tourism and local produce sector will inspire businesses to consider new innovative models and create new products, new market opportunities, and to use e-commerce. This goes hand in hand with supporting the burgeoning position of lower paid workers with our Good Work pledge. The scarring effects on young people, both at school and seeking work during the pandemic, has hit individual well-being and not only diminishes the productive capacity of our economy, highlighting the need for investment in young people to build confidence in their future career prospects. Our education challenge focuses on pupils from the most disadvantaged background, and the programme will support around 11,000 pupils, 400 teachers and 35 head teachers. We've heard from Councillor Kilgour how it sets out our ambition to address the historical education underperformance in our area and better prepare our children for their future. I wholeheartedly agree with her that significant government funding of an education challenge remains essential, but we should not wait, and I am delighted we've agreed the Education Improvement Pilot Programme. The lack of balance of equity and equality and the economic factors we have not counted before makes our investment vital and our focus on sustainable, inclusive recovery essential. Mayor Driscoll and Councillor Wearmouth have already told us today how the offshore wind sector provides a game-changing economic opportunity for our area. It is focused on improvements that will strengthen existing capabilities and capacity, as well as attracting new opportunities, and it bears repeating that our mission for good green jobs is both sensible and sustainable. In November last year, Cabinet approved £10 million of funding to support a post-COVID economic recovery for innovations that will make a difference now and that will leave a legacy long beyond the immediate crisis. It is clear in my report today that we are on a way to recovery, aware of our complexity, conscious of the demands, but with clear delivery plans, ensuring that the residents of North Tyne have the skills and opportunity to work and have the economic freedom we all deserve. We now have 75 live projects. We are expecting to create over 4,000 jobs and safeguard a further 2,500. I recommend the report to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Carl. And what a tour de force. Has anybody got anything they would like to add or ask? Oh, come on, that was a good report. Someone must have something to say.
Yeah,
Norma.
I'll just say it's really sort of pleasing, actually, pleasing to sit here and be part of this organisation that's making so much happen. So, you know, well done, to be quite honest, and right across the board. And one of the things that it does stresses, and actually is attempting, and will do, I think, improve the lives of our people. That's what we're about. But I think it's about priorities as well. It's addressing those things we can change, right? And addressing those things that, if we actually put an effort into make it happen now, we'll see a big difference. So yes, it really is good news. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's move on to the recommendations. First of all, to note the progress in the investment fund, which is substantial, the achievement of those key milestones, the ongoing work, particularly in respect of defrayed expenditure, and the achievements in terms of tangible jobs for residents as a direct result of our investment. Well, I think we can note and agree that. Thank you. Second one, to note and approve the Battleship Wharf, note the approval of the Battleship Wharf to Northumberland Energy Park and Inward Investment Capacity Projects, and that they are subject to a delegated decision by the Managing Director. A separate report on this Cabinet agenda seeks approval for the Education Investment Pilot Programme, which we did earlier, so we've noted that. Specifically, and these are spending commitments, so approve 906,052 of funding to Newcastle Gateshead Initiative to deliver the localised supply chains and tourism project innovation project. This is again creating jobs and supporting economic recovery in these sectors. I can see lots of nods there, thank you. Excuse me. Recommendation number 4, approve the funding of 887,500 to North of Tyne Combined Authority to deliver and innovate our child poverty prevention programme. And lots of very enthusiastic nods and applause on that one. I think that's the first applause we've ever had at a Cabinet meeting. And finally, to authorise the Managing Director to finalise the conditions to be attached to the above and authorise the Monitoring Officer to complete the necessary documentation, which is agreed. Thank you very much, everybody. Just on that one, I was visiting Verisure just a couple of weeks ago. There's hundreds and hundreds of people there in that office, in work, because of the investments that we've made. It is fantastic to see what we're doing. So let's move on to item number 11. This is the financial planning and budget process, and I'll hand over to Katie.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Mayor, Apologies. Yes, this report is on the 2022-26 North of Tyne Combined Authority Financial Planning and Budget process. I'm here presenting this on behalf of Janice Gillespie, who's otherwise engaged. This is the initial report to Cabinet outlining the process to be adopted for the Authority's financial planning and budget process for the financial year 22-23 as part of the proposed framework for the 4 years 2022 to 23 to stretching to 2025-26. Medium-term financial strategy is developed within the context of the strategic priorities and policy decisions made by the Mayor and Cabinet to ensure the Authority's strategic plans can be developed within the resources available. In addition, the medium-term financial strategy ensures the Authority has a clear financial vision and direction for the medium term, and the Mayor and Cabinet understand the financial implications of every decision that it's taking. Further reports will follow as part of this process, setting the Authority's budget for the financial year 22-23. The next report to Cabinet will be on the 30th of November 2021, which will outline the budget proposals. This report sets out the information in relation to the proposed financial planning and budget process, including information on key decisions and milestones. And it's done in parallel with the corporate plan that was taken to the annual meeting in June 2021. And so very much aligns with that of the Combined Authority. So the recommendation for this report is for Cabinet to recommend to approve the proposed outline for 22-26 financial planning and budget process, which incorporates the key decision milestones and dates as set out in Appendix A to this report.
Thank you, Katie. Obviously a technical report, but if anybody has any questions? No? Are we happy to endorse that process? Yes, I can see lots of nods there. Thank you very much, Katie. Well, that's taken us through the business, but there is just one announcement I would like to make. And that is just to say thank you to Pat Ritchie. Pat's not here today. She was, I think she's probably still dealing with the BBC. There's been some fantastic news on some investment from the BBC today that a number of us had to rush back for to get to Cabinet. So Tom's substituting. But Pat, she's been Chief Executive at Newcastle for, well, certainly before I was a councillor, but was absolutely instrumental in getting the Combined Authority to fruition, to exist. Particularly a lot of the work with Whitehall, with civil servants, guiding the process, and was head of paid service at the same time as being Chief Executive in Newcastle when I was elected. So really like to put on record thanks to Pat, who is retiring. I don't know the exact date, but it's in the next couple of weeks, isn't it?
15th of October.
15th of October.
We are, I should point out, we're not allowed to use the R word, retirement. It's stepping back from the role. I get told off otherwise.
Yes, that's very Pat. Pat will be stepping back from her current duties, indeed. So I certainly just want to put that on record. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything. Glenn.
Yes, I would very much like to go along with the comments that you've made. I have great respect for Pat Ritchie. I think she's a huge talent, and I hope very much we should see more of her locally, but also nationally, to help us through local government. And may I also say, before we finish, can we just touch on the meeting timetable before you finish the thing?
Thank you, Glenn. The date and time of the next meeting is 2 o'clock on the 30th of November. Was there anything else you wanted to raise? Yeah, Glenn.
Well, first of all, I don't think I'll be around on the 30th of November, but I'm just wondering, I mean, this is a lovely building. It is absolutely marvellous. And it's very kind of Newcastle City Council to let us use this. But I was just wondering, do we rotate around the combined authorities at all to hold our meetings? And secondly, why don't we hold a meeting occasionally in one of our key investment areas of the combined authority? I'm thinking about Port of Blythe, for example, would be a useful place to meet and spend an hour looking around the Port of Blythe. And I'm sure Port of Tyne and others would make really interesting places to hold our meetings that we could actually learn and engage more with those important places. But having said that, I think this is a beautiful building. It's very nice. Just quite hard to hear down at this end. I can't hear Norma very well, but that may not be a bad thing.
Well, I think I'm going to have to keep order on that last point. Actually, technically, it was because the live streaming aspect, this had the best technical setup, which is why we're in Newcastle. Prior to that, we always did rotate, and there have been suggestions and some conversations about exactly that suggestion you make. So it's wonderful when we reach the same conclusions independently, Glenn, that there are some very good places I would very much like us to see out and about. I don't know if Henry or Ruth has some specifics on this.
Firstly, can I thank Newcastle for hosting these meetings, because the reason we've had them in Newcastle is they've been able to provide the technology and the social distancing during the pandemic. As we emerge from the pandemic, we will obviously return to our rotational approach and be able to go to different places and have our meetings in all kinds of venues across the region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, that sounds like an informal one, and we'll see whether we can get a beautiful backdrop of the Tyne Bridge, of Sycamore Gap, of Bamburgh Castle. But particularly, I think you're very serious point about let's have it places where we've shown we can make the difference. I think that's a very good point, Glenn. Thank you very much for your attendance, Cabinet members. A massive thank you to the team for the work you've done. And just one little note, that quite soon we will be moving into our new premises at the Lumen. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.